while, my friends. It's good to be back. It is the 21st day of October 2018. I'm your host, Doug Owen, and you can go to my website, blacklistedradio.com. It's dedicated to the show. I'm the senior editor. For most of you that are familiar with the program, you know that, and most of you probably have found this show in its entirety, in all of its glory, there at blacklistednews.com, or via one of the links, or maybe through the last 10 years that we've been pumping out and broadcasting dissident media over the internet. So you can go to the chat room, blacklistedраdio.com, hang out with the trolls, myself and others. Even producer Ken there behind the glass chimes in from time to time here on the program. You can call him if you'd like to get onto the show. You can rant and rave. You can bring your thoughts, your takes on the world that is around us at 800-313-9443. And of course, you can text me, 512-222-3067. And a lot of you guys do. So what's going on in the world? The assassination, the speculation of the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi has definitely taken, I guess, myself by surprise. It is taking the world by storm, and there's really only one question in my mind, and that is, why is this one man so important to everything? Why is he key to the resistance, the newfound criticism of Saudi Arabia and the CIA's darling prince that is probably behind the sawing up, chopping up of Mr. Jamal. So we'll talk about it a little bit. It's interesting to see some of the blowback, international media affairs, moving conventions, Google, tech conferences, things like that. Apple, the big Fortune 500s coming out, and it's rare to see criticism of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And, of course, it's because they're so financially tied and strategic to the U.S. Not only British weapons companies, U.S. weapons companies. I mean, they are the biggest buyer of weapons. And, of course, they are fighting a proxy war for us in Yemen against the Houthis, the Iranian-aligned Houthis. This is an ongoing strategic relationship that is it's very tenuous. There's definitely a lot of interesting things to glean from this special relationship. And speaking of special relationships, we should talk about Khashoggi's special relationship with bin Laden. Oh, yeah. He was the one that allegedly, I'll just say that, tried to take bin Laden under his wing and turn him away from violence. Didn't work out so well, did it, Jamal? Anyway, yeah, he is he is so key to this special relationship. I remember when Obama said that there were special relationships. We'll get back to that. I did want to mention that the U.S. is pulling out of the nuclear arms treaty with Russia. It's pretty interesting. Just one of many treaties that Donald Trump has pulled the U.S. out of. The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty was signed between former President Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987. It banned all land-based cruise missiles with a range between 310 and 3,417 miles. So the Russians have been making lots of cruise missiles and other exotic weaponry that exceeds this 310 mile range. And don't think for a moment that the United States hasn't been making weapons and selling those around the world that would probably be in violation of the Nuclear Forces Treaty. So this has nothing to do with nuclear bombs. I guess it could. You can tip any kind of long-range missile with just about any kind of nuclear armament you want strategically. not huge bombs, but big enough to blow up some cities. So this from Trump, quote, Russia has violated the agreement. They've been violating it for many years, and I don't know why President Obama didn't recognize, or rather negotiate or pull out. We're not going to let them violate a nuclear agreement and go out and do weapons, and we're not allowed to. I don't know if that's really what he said, but quote, in quote, Trump said, quote, we're the ones that have stayed in the agreement and we've honored that agreement, but Russia has not, unfortunately, so we're going to terminate the agreement. Big deal? Probably not. Is it time for our new deal, the new NAFTA? I don't know if that actually had the opportunity on the podcast because it's been so sporadic and I've been neglecting it due to family issues. Ken thanked me for our celebrating our 19th anniversary. The wife, Miss Owen, and myself. The last weekend, it was it was time to spend a little time together. I've had a lot of other projects, and plus with 2 kids, and a growing fascination with lots of hobbies and things, and woodworking and other things. Not that I get a lot of time to do any of those specifically other than rear children. So I've got a lot of excuses, I guess, for not doing the show as much. But anyway, there is a new NAFTA. It's a new agreement. The copyright hounds love it. There's been almost no analysis. I myself did a little bit of it, but not preparatory for a radio show. But just one of the many things that I would say some people are appreciative of when it comes to Donald Trump, doing things that he said he would. Whether you like it or not, that is what he is doing. And so he is trying to rile up the base. You know, here the ramp up for defeating Beto O'Rourke is very hot. Donald Trump's going to come to Texas to try to save Ted. And, you know, of course, my take is that neither of these politicians really represent all the things that I want to see in a senator. Very powerful people. You know, Beto O'Rourke, like a lot of lip service liberals, you know, he's interested in the impeachment of Trump and just other nonsensical things that, you know, let's make his policy is just wish-washy. I watched some of the debates and it's a lot of feel-good stuff, you know, and that's if you thought Obama did a great job, if you thought that it wasn't just a lot of feel-good stuff, a lot of promises that sounded good, a lot of motivational speeches that left you hopeful. If you want more of that, Beto O'Rourke is that guy. But it's just kind of funny to me. Ted Cruz doesn't look Hispanic, and all of his supporters are just banging Beto O'Rourke for using the name Beto rather than his given name Robert. But regardless, that's a bunch of ridiculousness that is going on. Sometimes the political cycle and these midterms kind of bore me. Unfortunately, when I go to the poll, I don't find too many options there that I fully support. You really can't find an anti-war candidate. You can't find anybody that is the least bit concerned with the encroaching police state when it comes to safety and security, building a police state for you to love. Almost all of them, other than maybe the libertarians, a few people in the Green Party and others that, you know, I end up voting for, that don't stand a chance. Got to vote the less of the two evils. That is the prevailing thought that goes into the midterms. It's going to be interesting to see if there is the liberal outrage. I mean, if you've watched the coverage of news since 2016, it's been a tumultuous year for Donald Trump. Puerto Rico, there's a lot of things that we could go back to, you know, that were the immigrant caravan has become a new politicized hot issue. Are they going to make it? Is Donald Trump going to take the money, the purse strings away from these countries? I think the interesting takeaway is that basically we give money to countries to get them to do what we want them to do. You get them on the dole, and that is how U.S. politics works. And that's the biggest takeaway that I've seen. What is going to happen to these immigrants? Now, the media just loves them and is following them every moment they can, watching the the just canned, staged appeal to Americans. And if you see some of the real pictures of these guys burning U.S. flags, putting swastikas on them, you realize that reality that you perceived on TV is quite starkly different. Speaking of which, we had an interesting post from the International Watch blog about the Proud Boys. Now, the Proud Boys, if you're not familiar, are a group of guys that think it's okay to be proud of who you are, no matter what. It's okay. And I would say they're staunch Trump supporters, definitely kind of in the Republican flock. Gavin McInnes is probably one of the more famous Proud Boy members, has documented and talked about the demification of being to the right on politics. And, the nasty word, the one thing that you don't want to be called, and that is a racist, is loosely slung around by even, mainstream, supposedly legitimate media like the New York Post. So anyway, there was a fight that broke out, which I don't know. I don't know why you go to these GOP clubs to protest and to, basically get into a fist fight with Antifa, which are just a bunch of kids that are looking for a fight. And the Proud Boys, maybe they're not much better. I don't know. Yeah, you're not going to convince other people to vote for your guy by, engaging them physically at different political events. If that's your cup of tea, I was young once. I didn't mind going to a protest and finding some other people that have different political ideologies and getting into a fist fight. But I'm just not that radical anymore, I guess. Because quite literally, it's uncompelling and kind of pointless. And you might get a black eye. You might get, a cop kicking you in the back of the head for something that the media will just once again portray as a schism, as a far out radical group that's not an idea, not in the ideology rather of your liking. So you have this guy, this big burly guy. His name is, where I had it here. Goodness gracious, I should prepare better. He's one of the Proud Boy members. Anyway, this NY Post came out. Second Proud Boys member arrested for our fight outside GOP. Second member of the alt-right hate group Proud Boys was busted by the NYPD for the brawl with Antifa counter-protesters. Of course, they are counter-protesters. They are not a mob. Don't use that word because it has connotations. People get upset. It's a very sensitive word. Anyway, it's a picture of this big burly guy with this Proud Boy tattoo on his forearm. The press versus the reality, and I'll give him the attention he deserves. Joe Vanger, his Twitter handle is JOVANGNR, posted a picture of the Proud Boy member, this alleged right-wing hate mongering neo-Nazi hate group. And lo and behold, he actually has a black wife and a couple black kids. Mind blown. So at least there's people out there on Twitter
giving NY, the New York Post, and one of their very young editors the S-storm that they deserve. They're getting getting twittered and tweeted to death. So embarrassing. So embarrassing. But that is, just another case in point example where there's probably I could point to 1,000 a week where the mainstream media pushes their own agenda and the editors push their agenda, which is completely biased. So anyway, the Antifa protesters are trying to beat Proud Boy members into, giving them the tolerance that they deserve. Beating you into tolerance. You have to be tolerant, and if you're not tolerant, then we will punch you. If that is, that's your MO, that's your operating procedure, then you should really, really take a look in the mirror. So, let's see, we got a few minutes here. We'll talk about Jamal Khashoggi. Really, it's just kind of an overload of news regarding Khashoggi. And of course, I think that the world knows that he was murdered. The Canadian Prime Minister even warned the Saudis, do not hurt Jamal Khashoggi. Very intelligent, very well-heeled guy who was definitely mingling with the CIA for many years, intelligence analyst or asset rather, because he was in media. He was a media baron, of course, in Saudi Arabia. Of course, I mentioned he knew Bin Laden, and he wrote for the Washington Post. Do I need to explain this? Do I have to break it down? Probably not for most of you anyway. Germany suspends arms sales to Saudi weeks after the $500 million deal. I guess that's the only thing that's shocking to me is that there is any kind of reaction. Because it was just a few months ago when Pompeo was gushing about the Saudi prince, and I was listening to intelligence analyst after intelligence analyst after wink wink retired CIA guy on Fox News talking about how this transition is good. When we had the 100 businessmen, the most powerful businessmen in Saudi Arabia being tortured day after day in a hotel. And being forced to give over their fortunes to the kingdom. There wasn't a lot of, people were pretty excited about that here in the U.S. It hasn't stopped Trump from, taking lots of money from the Saudis and giving them lots of money. It's interesting to kind of fathom that there's this blowback if it's not part of a containment campaign, if it's not part of a broader U.S. shakeup. You got people that are very well connected, like Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio, political elite, that are at least rabble-rousing about Khashoggi. We want answers. Everybody knows what happened, I think. It's pretty obvious. There was a hit team, and, I don't know. Take a look at the guy. Did he get in the brawl? Was he brawling? Why was he brawling with Saudi intelligence? Oh, they're trying to fight people. The damage control is going, but foreigners sold a net $1.1 billion of Saudi stocks in the week of October 18th. Money doesn't lie, my friends. All right, quick break. Back on the other side with much more. Taking your phone calls, 800-313-9443 on the one and only Blacklisted Radio. All right, so I'm going to give you the scoop on Jamal Khashoggi. Tell you something you don't already know. And that is that he may have been a key to this 9/11 investigation, the 21 pages and
well, there's some interesting thoughts going on out there. The piece done by Finnan Cunningham back on the 14th. Did the Saudis and the CIA fear Khashoggi's 9/11 bombshell? So, yeah, I mean, he would have definitely had some interesting thoughts at the time he wrote and intel on the possible inside job that was the attacks that happened on September 11, 2001. It's pretty wild now thinking about this, but they are actually recruiting and enlisting young men and women that were not alive when the terror attacks happened on that day. Kind of puts it in perspective. Anyway, the macabre case of the missing journalist Jamal Khashoggi raises the question, did Saudi rulers fear him revealing highly damaging information on their secret dealings, in particular their possible involvement in the 9/11 terror attacks on New York in 2001. Even more intriguing are the U.S. media reports now emerging that American intelligence had snooped on and were aware of Saudi officials making plans to capture Khashoggi prior to his apparent disappearance at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul last week. If Americans knew the journalist's life was in danger, why didn't they tip him off to avoid his doom? It's a good question. How did they do this? How, without the CIA knowing and being very aware of the situation? Now, I did mention the Prime Minister voiced his concerns in Canada, so he might have had the inside tip from the I know they do actually have an intelligence service there in Canada. Probably doesn't get the attention it deserves. I don't even know what the acronym is for it. Anyway, Jamal Khashoggi, 59, had gone rogue from the Saudi elite's point of view. Formerly a senior editor at the Saudi state media and now advisor to the royal court, he was eminently connected to, and versed in the House of Saud affairs. As one commentator cryptically put it, quote, he knew where all the bodies were buried. Pretty important guy for the past year. Khashoggi went into self-imposed exile, taking up a residence in the U.S., where he began writing opinion columns for the Washington Post. Khashoggi's articles appear to be taking on increasingly critical tone against the heir of the Saudi throne, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the 33-year-old, yeah, give me a ding, 33, the magic number, Crown Prince, or as they call him, MBS, is the de facto ruler of the oil-rich kingdom in place of his aging father, King Salman. So it's a race to replace. Now, that is what Lindsey Graham said, that we would have to get some insurance that he was not going to be the heir to the Saudi crown. And that would be a problem, because we've got all these people that, I don't know, the Saudi Arabians themselves that, have, it's almost like North Korea. There's this magical, mythical reason that they are ruled by these a-holes, this small group of family that are royal. At some point, these people are going to eventually be pulled into the 21st century by technology and things that the modernization, the inevitable modernization that will take hold in Saudi Arabia. And it's happening in a small way. It just shows you how outdated the kingdom is. The special relationship should definitely be questioned more. But when it comes to the Saudi-U.S. relations, and I laid out the basic foundation. Guns, Iran. The CIA specifically hates Iran because, well, all of their post-World War II shenanigans around the world had installed dictators from Pinochet to the Shah in Iran. And, the Khomeini, once again, was not U.S. friendly. And, I think a lot of people have a lot of bad blood. There's no good guys in this scenario. Don't think that the U.S. and its allies are any more virtuous than the Iranians. And I think a lot of people definitely carry water for the Iranian point of view. I just haven't seen them invading countries as of late, at least not effectively, not assassinating people daily, like our good friends. We can talk about all the missing princes. There's 3 princes that have gone missing, and MBS is he is definitely the suspect number 1. When it comes to all the people that come up missing whenever they start talking about that. So, this autocratic, very outdated, antiquated kingdom that's very rich and well connected, and we carry water for the Saudis. They do the same for us, and they were intimately involved in 9/11. I mean, Jamal Khashoggi said it. Now, some people would say, well, you're running cover for all these other groups. You're running cover for Dick Cheney. You're running cover. No. There are so many aspects of 9/11 that do not make any sense, do not scientifically or even, the aftermath, the immediate deceptions that, just somebody looking at, batting average. Iraq, Afghanistan, where else? Oh, yeah, Libya. Just a few examples of the lies that came out of 9/11. So to think that it was anything less than that that'd be pretty ridiculous. All right, guys, quick break. You can be part of it, 800-313-9443, right here on Blacklisted Radio. Oh, the truth's going to come out sooner or later, as soon as it's convenient. Now there's more questions about 9/11. Of course, the U.S. government, the White House, Dick Cheney, he was in the saddle and took bin Laden's family and put them on a jet plane, back to the Middle East, back to their homes, while all domestic flights were on the ground, grounded on 9/11. They were allowed to escape. Yeah, so that doesn't seem weird to people. I don't know. I just think that, there's a lot of really telling things that should definitely make the top 10 list when it comes to 9/11 and obviously the problems with the official story. It's let's see. Oh no, I thought there was a caller. Okay, so anyway, so we touched on that. Some of the other things I want to get to today really do highlight the situation around the world. Mass immigration, those that are chanting, this is the thing that's interesting to me, and that is that there are, Building 7 is my safe space. Thank you, Ken. I like that. Anyway, mass migration can be a great thing if there is something for the people to do. There's a mass migration across this country to the west for gold, for richness, and many were able to capitalize. Not so many of the people that were looking for the gold, but of course all the boom towns and company stores that popped up around those boom towns and were able to provide and ship in supplies to the miners and whatnot that made America what it is. That's why we bent all the rules to make California a state. They did not have to be they didn't have to go through the whole process like the rest of the states, being a territory first and blah 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 blah. So if you have things for people to do, if you're exploring a great new territory that's full of opportunities, mass migration could probably be decent. It's good for the economy, and it's definitely one of the reasons that we have infrastructure in the country today that we enjoy. Modern America. Love it, or I don't know. I hate that saying. That came out of 9/11. Love it or leave it. Love it or leave it. So anyway, I guess it's kind of my anecdote into this story. Sweden declares hand grenade amnesty in attempt to stop explosive gang violence. This is Sweden. Okay, Sweden 10 years ago, they didn't have a hand grenade problem. And you're not a hate-mongering white supremacist if you wonder what the real issue here is, and you're not taken back by the mainstream media gobbledygook that they're feeding people. This came out of Zero Hedge. On October 15th, Sweden began a temporary amnesty program from anyone
possessing hand grenades or other explosives, urging the public to hand over their illegal arsenals before January 11, 2019, with no legal ramifications or questions asked. That's the funny thing. Every once in a while, there'll be some grandma in California that turns in, a grenade launcher, shoulder-mounted IED, something like that. Sweden has a hand grenade crisis and issues with organized crime since about 2010. Combine the two with refugees, and the country is on the verge of chaos with violent crime exploding. Sweden is supposed to be one of the most beautiful, peaceful countries in Europe, but after offering amnesty to thousands of refugees, the country has taken a turn for the worst. Of course, you're not supposed to know this, and if you say it and observe the cultural shock that is taking place in your country, you're going to be, I just, that's why I think the left is losing in a lot of ways, because the only people that still buy that socialism can work with a burgeoning economy and a burgeoning population in these remote areas that are socialist, that produce nothing for the world. They don't export a lot of things in Sweden. Well, I think they have some watchmakers. I mean, they have IKEA, I guess. Not that it's run in Sweden, but nonetheless, when you have a few people, when you have a small population, you have a certain amount of strategic resources and a sufficient economy. You can do a lot. You can do a lot with that. It's a whole nother thing when you let hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, use the systems that are not designed for it. It's just like when you have an apartment complex, and instead of having two people, maybe three people in a one-bedroom apartment, you have 15. Do that over and over again, and there's just too many people pooping. Too many people pooping, and it's not designed for it. Can't work. That's a bad analogy, but that is the problem with unfettered immigration, especially when we have these control mechanisms and safety nets that surround us. So I don't know. I don't know. These people want a police state for you, but would love to invite strangers into their home. I don't understand how you can support that, because ultimately these people are not invested. They're not invested. They're not vested in your way of life, your culture, your value system, and it becomes a clash. And what you have built, and what the people that were there paying taxes to their representative government to build for them, because government protects your liberty. Wink, wink. That's not what they wanted. And, of course, it's just a campaign to shut people up by calling them, that's right, racist. You don't like them because you are a racist. So, I mean, turning a blind eye to the actual problem is that's what people like Beto O'Rourke do. Not that Ted Cruz is that great. He wants to frack everything. He has a commercial on now. Let's frack. We need to frack Texas. Who cares about the water? We're making money. It's the economy. It's going to continue to rise. Well, I think the Game of Thrones reference here, winter is coming, is apropos. Smart home companies refusing to say whether law enforcement is using your gadgets to spy on you. Now, when I ask my son, did you take the cookie from the cookie jar? And he looks at me and he doesn't say anything. It's about as good as a yes. So, doesn't take a lot of social science to figure out when companies are lying to you. Transparency reports are standard practice across the tech industry, disclosing the nature, quantity, and scope of all of these law enforcement requests each company receives each year. They probably have to legally turn over this information. But how it will be used and how selectively, I mean, obviously there's a indictment behind the just waiting at any moment for anybody that's getting their information tracked and traced. I know a lot of you will say, well, if you're not a criminal, doesn't matter where I've been running every week. I like having my Fitbit. And the chances of somebody really caring enough to hack your Fitbit, probably pretty minimal, unless it's a stalker murderer that has access to a lot of that information. That's really, really, really tech savvy. Those are kind of situations where I think, well, yeah, maybe it's stalker, but better yet, building a case against you. That is what this technology does. It creates digital dossiers, and it creates electronic profiles on you as a person that can be used by insurance companies, actuaries. They can input your lifestyle choices. There's a new insurance, Zoom, I think it's called. You get this app on your phone, and they track your driving, and they judge it, not based on, I don't know, your age or how many wrecks you've been in, other things that insurance companies would use. They just look at your current driving algorithms, patterns, and as long as you're willing to keep that app going in your car all day long, and I guess keep that, I don't know, it's just space on your phone. One more thing tattletaling, one more thing that is constantly surveilling you so that you can get cheaper access to driving on those public roads you're forced to pay for. It's funny how that works. Got to buy the insurance, Doug. That's what people always told me about the the Affordable Health Care Act. Well, you got to pay for insurance if you want to get on the road. You got to pay for the road even if you can't get on it. It's pretty funny how that works. Kind of seems like an extortion racket to me, quite honestly. But when they paid with gas taxes, I guess that would have been somewhat fair. Seemed fair. Anyway, there's a notable exception for this practice. The smart home companies who sell you products that fill your house with gadgets that know every intimate fact of your life, all seeing eyes, all listening ears, all surveillance network taps. The companies that sell these products refuse to say whether or how they are being subordinated, I guess, to serve as, that would be the verb, suborned, to serve as state surveillance adjuncts by law enforcement. It was interesting. I talked to a good buddy of mine, shout out to you, Chad, who took his daughter to ACL, the Austin City Limits Music Festival. That takes like 2 weeks, I think. There's 2 weekends. And Paul McCartney, I mean, the who's who of the entertainment industry, musicians, up and comers, and big names like Metallica are there. And interestingly enough, he said that his smartphone would not do any of the things that he would have liked it to do, like videotape. How old are you, Doug? Actually, I did go to VCR school, so that should tell you something there. Talk about a person that's had to change occupations with the times. I used to actually install telephone systems. They don't exist anymore. Server-based SIP phones and IP phones, all made by Cisco. That's where it's at today. Those things don't exist. So that's one of the things I've always told people. Kind of relates to this. Remain relevant. Try to remain useful here on planet Earth. And you'll find that lots of doors will close on you or close for you. And they sure have in my lifetime. But you have to open new ones. Anyway, these guys want to open all sorts of surveillance doors into your home, and people are just taking them. Who knows what your Roomba's telling everybody, but damn, it's handy. We have a Roomba, and I've had to defunct a lot of things. It wants you to put an app on there, like no Wi-Fi password. You don't get Wi-Fi, not installing an account. Just wants you to go around in circles and pick up all of the crumbs my children leave. Some 1/5 eaten sandwiches. Things. Well, I don't know if it would get that sandwich, but bugs, flies that have found their way to the floor when I swack at them. Anyway, so people are definitely embracing this idea of 24-hour surveillance and kind of broadcasting themselves. I guess I do that to an extent right here in this show, but yeah, I think that more and more consumers are becoming aware of this, and there are people in industry and in government that are trying to balance the protections versus all of that good data that people are getting. I'm talking about the companies that are selling this information. Amazon won't tell you whether or not they're selling your information about buying habits to third-party companies. So if you have Amazon Prime, does somebody know what you're watching at night? Of course they do. And of course, with more consolidation of media and limiting media choices, it makes it harder and harder for people to have a platform. Story came from Disobedient Media via its author, Elizabeth Lee Voss. Where does the latest social media purge leave the state of social discourse? Dissident media previously reported the tightening stranglehold of censorship across the media. Unfortunately, events that have taken place since the publication of that piece, the famous, talk by a dissident that has brought a lot of light to the surveillance state. Not that a lot of people probably care anymore. Julian Assange, the crackdown on a lot of websites, over I think it was 800 websites and their Facebook and Twitter accounts were shut down. Free Thought Project, we cross-post some of their stuff. Anti-Media and all of the editors of these websites themselves were banned in conjunction with a Twitter and Facebook purge that happened. Now, of course, prop or not, I've talked about it. We were on the 100 most likely to be Russian dupe websites. That list was used. Allegedly, they're taking credit for that list being used to go after these websites. So I've heard of Matt Agorist. He's one of the writers over at the Free Thought Project. Rachel Blevins, who does a lot of really good journalism, have been silenced. Now, I thought about it, and I was like, well, why is Blacklisted News not on this list? It's probably because I don't have 1 million+ viewers on my YouTube account or any of those social media platforms. I do have a decent amount of Twitter followers. We have like 58,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we are still populating and pushing stuff from the Free Thought Project and those websites with abandon for where that may leave us on these social media platforms, on our Blacklisted News page, and that may have repercussions in the future for the distribution of this podcast. We used to be able to monetize this on YouTube. I don't think we don't have enough followers. You need 10,000 followers before you can make money. I don't want any of those quick fly-by-night accounts making cash on their own. So where does this leave us? With more state control, more media control, and less options for getting information out, especially leading up to the 2018 elections. Is it election fraud? I think so. Quick break. Back on the other side. We'll wrap it up right here on Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Thank you so much for being part of it. It's nice to see some of the familiar faces there in the chat room, and a few of our crew hanging out, texting into the show. You can do that anytime. 512-222-3067. So Turkey is now, here's the new wrinkle, Turkey's now put Jamal Khashoggi's fiance under 24-hour protection. I don't know what that means. I would be scared. That didn't seem to do too well for Jamal. Now, and the fact that they didn't realize it was happening is surprising as well. So everybody's trying to run away from this murder as fast as possible. There's a must-read, came from Gary Levin over at The Intercept, about this Wall Street coup, basically explaining how financial industry, hedge fund leaders drove public pensions into crisis and pocketed billions of dollars in fees. That's how they get you, kids. They fee you to death. You buy something, you got to pay all the taxes, and then you got to get all the licensing, and you got to do all the administrative stuff that goes on. So everything's been not only financialized to death, to where the world and the continuing rollout from the government, Social Security, all of the payouts from these retirement systems need that interest rate to go up and keep people keep borrowing for it to work. Thousands of Kentucky public school teachers swarmed the state capitol earlier this year, angry not about salaries, but about their shrinking pensions. Among their concerns, the high portion of money that has ended up in the hands of Wall Street in an opaque, high-cost products that seem to benefit no one aside from the people who sold them. And that's the problem, when you have these pension systems that are, operating within maybe the letter of the law, but not the spirit. I hear that a lot. They didn't operate. Trump didn't operate in the spirit of the law. Should have paid more taxes. He tried to get away with only paying the government so much. But anyway, it's an interesting, intricate look at how, I think the misdiagnosis that you get from a lot of libertarian and commentators on the right about pension systems. It's not so much that free market capitalism, raw naked capitalism prevails, but when people write the law, the people that write the laws, they are paid and put in place by these industry leaders, hedge fund brokers, Wall Street itself. I mean, look around on every corner. What do you see? A bank. I mean, I don't know how many banks we need, but man, they're just building them all around me, every which way. And I just don't know how many, we're moving into this cashless society. I just don't know how many people have that many financial services that have to be used, that need to go to the branch any longer. Anyway, there is that. Another good piece. Where did we see it? Where was it? It was in my stack. I've got a whole new tag for just Khashoggi keeping up with the drama. I'll bring more. We'll see the rollout of this somewhat staged response to these killings, and what new details we hear from the people you can't trust, the Saudis and the Turks, when it comes right down to it, or the CIA for that matter. So maybe the media will unfold some of this. Maybe they'll dig a little deeper. Don't count on it. All right, guys, that's my time. I will be back next week. Cross my heart. Promise. Pinky swear. For another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Hope all of you have a great week, and until then, take care, my friends.